Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind, and I am joined here by the usual suspects, Coach Roach, and Beyond the Locker Room. I'm also joined by Amit. Amit is, of course, you probably, if you're a longtime Raptors fan, you've seen him on Yahoo. He is now part of, and I'll let Amit, uh, describe his new role as of late. Is
It's just
yeah.
yeah, it's a producer host role with the Raptors Show, hosted by William Liu. Did some hosting this week for the first time. It was a lot of fun, but yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's nice to get invites to these things. I don't take it for granted. It's always it's humbling. It's a nice thing. People want to share basketball conversation with you. I think that means a lot to me. So thank you.
Always. And before we start, how's everyone doing? We'll go with my screen. So, Coach Roach first. How have you been, and how's life?
I'm doing pretty good and excited to be here. Amit, welcome to the show, man. It's great. I've seen your stuff on YouTube for the last couple of years and big fan. Good to have you here.
I appreciate it, man. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Dion?
Hey, same thing, man. Big fan of the work and glad to see, you're on your new home here. Some guy I heard of, but Will Lewis heard his name before me once or twice, So great to be on the show. As for myself, hey, I'm glad to be amongst the healthy again, or at least healthier. Last week was a little rough, so I'm sorry I wasn't able to join you guys last week. I'm glad to be back.
Absolutely. So, I mean, of course, we went through another week in Raptors land. Some of these weeks are longer than others, of course, partially because, sometimes there's more games, sometimes there's less games, but also because of the state of the team. So, with that being said, today we are going to be talking about someone who I was going to wait to talk about until the end of the season, but he's probably not going to play a lot more games. And it's not Jakob Poeltl, but it is Scottie Barnes. So, Amit, I believe I'm going
hmm
to get the wrong month here, but I believe last season, close to the end of the season, you did a overall kind of recap of Scottie Barnes' improvement from the mid range. I think
Yeah.
specifically,
Yep.
it was a really well done piece. It illuminated certain things for me, and I kind of want to dig into that because this year has been a very interesting um, overall year. Of course, we've seen the numbers overall from three
Yep.
have improved. I am not looking at the numbers, so I'm doing this just by my mind, but I believe he's shot around 34.2%, I think. Just off the top of my head. So if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
sorry.
you're good. Yep.
Okay.
5% increase from compared to last season.
Absolutely.
34.
Of course, what's interesting is when I dug down and I kept digging down through the numbers, when you look at catch and shoots versus pull-ups, it tells a little bit of a different story. Of course, his catch and shoot numbers are, for large parts of the season were in the 40s. I don't know what they are as of date today, but I know for what I've seen, the pull-up numbers were fairly, sub 30.
Mm.
What is interesting to me, and I don't know, I'm just going to do this part just off the top of my head, is that it seems like whether it's post Siakam trade or not, he this year did not necessarily take as many mid rangers. But on top of that, it seems like it's almost like it evaporated from part of his game. There was a moment where you could almost see, and I again from memory, it seemed like he was developing a bit of a go-to move with the step back, in that mid range around the nail area. Is something that Beyond and I mentioned even in summer when we were watching the Ultimate Weapon, do his stuff in Miami. So I'm just wondering I'll start with you, but your thoughts as to maybe why is that a Darko thing, or perhaps yeah, why is that the case?
I mean, I would think it is a bit of a Darko thing, and how he wants to deploy Scotty and how he wants the offense to look like. It's very different. You guys know too. It's very different from what they were running last season, right? And I think more than anything, like when I talked to Will about this the other day, and we got into a bit of like a back and forth about it because I was saying that like the team they have now is as close as we've probably seen in terms of Darko's vision. Now, the wins, losses right now obviously not there, but you're also missing your two best defenders in Scottie and Jakob Poeltl. So the losses are probably going to populate. But at the same time, like the play style that they're looking for, what he wants to play, I think this is as close as you can probably get to it, at least for this season. RJ Barrett, seamless fit. Like he was made to be a Toronto Raptor under Darko Rakovic. Emmanuel quickly, you guys will talk about it probably, but I've been really impressed with how he's been playing. But with Darko's system, like it is a lot of drive, cut, make fast reads. It doesn't really have a lot of space for mid-range shots unless they're running high pick and roll. And maybe in some of those cases, like maybe Scottie's going to be doing that, but it's not going to be all the time, especially when you see the way quickly is developing. Probably some of those reps are going to go towards him instead of Scottie. And I think that's fair considering how he's been playing over the past little while, if we're just like projecting to what next season's going to look like. But yeah, the mid-range is kind of going away. The post-ups is probably where he'll be able to utilize more of his mid-range game, but that's kind of a different beast compared to what he was kind of doing last season. Like it was a bit of off post-ups, off of like empty side stuff, and just like facing up to your man, do a quick jab, get your shot off. He was doing a bit more of that compared to last season, but a lot of his mid-range I found was coming off of movement. In terms of like, he's cutting towards the ball, he's cutting off ball, he's finding space on the court. That's not what it was necessarily this season. And I think that's okay. Now, same time, like if we're thinking about what Scottie's going to be, years from now, he's going to have a solidified mid-range game if we think he's going to be like your number one option, if that's what you're hoping he's going to be. But it has gone away. I don't think it's because it's not as accurate as it was maybe last season or anything like that. I think it's just a product of the system.
So I have follow-ups from that, but beyond or coach, do any of you want to chime in here at all?
Well, do you want to do your follow-up first before you forget it?
No. So okay. So my follow-up is really just.
This is why you write down things while you're podcasting, bro.
I have a whole thing.
Okay.
So
right.
it's up to y'all.
Yeah.
But but yeah, my follow-up is really more about for Barnes. You wonder. It's kind of a follow-up for you. Is like, I agree with you. At the same time, it's kind of I guess a philosophical question of should Darko be mixing in more of the mid-range than he has been? Because ultimately, I know everyone goes to the analytical approach, but the three options that you have is rim attempts, 3-point attempts, and mid-range. If you shoot, I think it's like 50 to 55. I did the math the other day. 50 to 55% for mid-range, you could score an above average points per possession rate. Building that is the challenge. Obviously, Scottie needs, to improve on the handle and, he has to find ways to get into the mid-range, which is why I agree with you. They find ways to get him downhill with, instead of the traditional pick and rolls, it's kind of like a kind of a pitch and go, so to speak. But I'm wondering, like, do you think that they should be challenging him more in terms of in that area or finding more of those opportunities at this point in his, I guess, career development?
But I think, it's a tough one because like, as you guys know too, like when you get down into the playoffs nitty gritty, final 2 minutes, whatever the case is, like it does end up being a bit isolation. Like you're kind of running your pick and roll, you're looking for your advantages. We saw it last night with the Raptors and Blazers game too. So yes, he should be developing that. I think it's gonna come up, right? And when that moment comes up, you don't know when it's gonna be. You want to be prepared for it. And but it's just not. It's not what they're looking for. It's not the shots they're looking for. Like it only really like in what cases is it really going to come up? Like it would be off of a DHO, or maybe he's keeping it and maybe he's spinning into a mid-range shot. Okay, there's that option, 1-2 dribble, that kind of thing. A pick and roll if he's the ball handler. He's not going to like pick and pop into a mid-range shot. It's going to be from 3. So it's got to be there, and when you need it, it needs to be there. But I think it's fair that you want more shots towards the rim. You want like the paint is open, and that is again part of the vision here is that you have five out. You have your big kind of running DHOs, and he's setting screen and rolls and all that kind of fun stuff, and the paint's wide open, and so you don't need to settle for a mid range shot. The ideal is that you're getting right downhill, right to the basket, and you're punching it in. So it's a tough thing to kind of like wrap your head around because I think we're still getting a feel for what Darko's system is going to be like going forward. But in short, yes, it has to be there, but I think it's difficult to project where it fits in with the current system.
I'll jump in here. I think I see it a little different than you guys in this case here. I think it's a little less Darko and more do it personnel. I think this year has been 3 distinct Scottie seasons in one. There's the first part of the season where he's 3-point bomber playing along with Siakam. And he's finding his spots off of catch and shoots off a lot of double teams from Siakam and whomever else might be getting a double team that night. Then there's the second phase of it, then post Siakam trade, pre the last set trade deadline, where you started seeing him trying to fit with Quickly and Barrett. And with that group in this case here, the 3-point shot was a struggle. He's trying to play that way for a while, but in this case, the catch and shoot wasn't as easy because the double teams coming out, in my mind, weren't as clean as they were when he was getting it with Siakam. So he had to figure out a new way, and it was a little ugly. The field goal percentage was a little dipping, I think, during that phase. Obviously, we know what happened just prior to the All-Star break. It was a little frustrating for him on that front. The part that I find, man, this is the part I wish he didn't get hurt, because I think I talked to you guys about this, is the games right after the All-Star break, because that's the third phase. And the 3-point attempts dropped for the most part. I'm looking here. I see 0 for 2, 0 for 3, 0 for 5, 2 for 5. Before he got hurt in this case, he played the 15-plus minutes against Golden State. Those games I found in this case here, he was much more aggressive trying to get in the hoop. And the other thing that was starting to happen a little bit, it started happening even prior to the All-Star game. From the standpoint, and maybe because with Pirtle's injury, it forced them to finally do probably what they should have been doing. They were playing Scottie from the high post. What a shock. I don't know. It's like, oh, my goodness. So to go back to our mid-range discussion, there's opportunities there, which we should start seeing him now facing up some guys from the mid-range. 1-2 bounces, he's in the lane, or in this case, they sagged off. He was willing to pull the shot off. My thing is with the personnel standpoint, and this part, I guess, goes back to Darko, is that it's almost like he fights from the strengths of the players he has a little bit at times till we have to kind of go through this rigmarole for about a 3-week phase till we finally get to where they should be in the first place. When you're plopping them into the little puzzle box in this case, it's like, okay, Scottie probably be best if he's playing a high post. If times, that might be a good place for him to kind of work his magic. And for some reason, we have to go through this whole thing for a few weeks till we finally arrive to the logical conclusion. Same thing we talked about in previous episodes with, say, Gradey. Grady's a guy's a motion shooter. We have to go through a whole month of him standing still as if he's like PJ Tucker. And we're wondering, like, well, you know what? He's pretty damn good moving without the ball, be it mid-range or 3-point shot. And voila, we finally arrived at that conclusion. But I feel we have to always go through, this obstacle course till we get to where we all know we have to get to. So I'm really I got some, and I'm looking at my numbers here of what he did during those 3.5 games, and as I said before, it's too bad. It's such a small sample size, but I really like what I was starting to see from him post All-Star break. His mentality seemed to be different in his approach.
Well, I'll just say one other thing before Coach chimes in. The interesting thing is you mentioned like the him having to space at times. What's interesting to me is that he drove more with Siakam on the court.
Yeah.
So I'm actually more on, I don't want to say the beyond side of things, but you know what I mean? I'm more of a believer that it's a blend of, yes, maybe Darko has his way. There was comments by, I think, Dennis Schroeder basically outlining that he's a very European coach, but not quite like Blatt, I think, as to paraphrase.
I was like, damn.
His words, not mine, okay? But, check out Will Lou show.
On Tuesdays, James Cruiser's on.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe not as much, though. But, with that being said, there is still, so it might be a little bit of Darko, but I also think it's a little bit of, okay, I know my handle. I know that I can't get to spots, but when there's another creator, forget, like, for people who are whatever about it being Siakam, if there's another creator on the court who can actually help to generate some sort of advantage or gravity, he is, for me, Scottie is one of the best at taking advantage of that. In terms of creating the gravity for himself, he's still getting there, but he might get there.
Yeah.
Coach, sorry, I jumped in there.
No, I just wanted to talk about this mid-range idea with Scotty. In a general sense, the mid-range game in the NBA is on life support right now. Not many offenses are trying to rely on it too much. The DeMar DeRozan's, like, that style is just, it's going. And Kawhi Leonard and KD are probably two of the most popular ones who use it quite effectively. But when you take a look at Jason Tatum, nope. Luka Doncic, nope. Jokic is like foul line and in. Embiid can have a little bit of mid-range game as well. But for the most sense, this is Mike D'Antoni 20 years ago. This is the modern offense of today. And Scotty does need a mid-range game. I agree. But I think part of this is just a little bit, yes, it's Darko's offense that we're seeing, which is more about trying to get open threes, ball movement. And it's a nice change, I will say, from last year. Last year was very ISO heavy with Siakam and Fred. And then when Pirtle came, a lot of screen and roll with Fred.
Yep.
This year, I know that we're not as good, but I see what's coming forward if you have the right pieces, as Amit said. I think a lot of the guys that they brought in fit that mold to what Darko wants to do. But I do kind of wonder, though, moving forward, if there's going to be a desire to have Scotty be like top-notch mid-range shooter. It's hard to say with these modern offenses. A lot of it's freeze, foul line, and in. So I'm curious to see what that's going to be like next year. And I'm just taking a guess with the way Darko offense is run. I don't see how there's going to be that push to do that. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of what we're all kind of saying, the same sort of thing is that the way you use Scotty, if he is your DHO hub, then what's Jakob Poeltl doing? Right? And is he like spacing to the dunker spot? Are you finding some like off ball stuff where he's in the corner and he's setting like pin downs and stuff like that? Like they could do that kind of thing, but you don't necessarily need two players doing that. Now they have toyed with that a little bit. I think they did that a little bit with Nick Nurse last season. Also this season too, is that they had like Jakob and Scotty at different points. Like they're both setting screens on opposite sides of the court, right? And that's another way where you could see maybe like, Scotty rolls, he gets into some space around the baseline. Now he's able to get into a mid-range shot. I just think that it has to be kind of orchestrated that you want him to kind of get those kinds of reps in those situations, but also I'd rather just him be in the paint, just live there, right? Even before like you mentioned it's better. He's better off being this person that is just like aggressively pursuing and penetrating the front of the rim, right? That's where he's special. And that's what I liked those few games before he got injured. That's what he was doing. There was an effort to get to the rim. And I think that's the best version of him. So the mid-range conversation, like I did that video last season and it was last season. Last season is not this season. Now it's very different. So he has to continue to develop that part of his offense, but at the same time, I think we all agree like threes and layups is what we're looking for here, and also more free throws.
I might be the odd man out. Maybe call me old school Joe in this case here on this. I don't know. I mean, about a month's time, we're gonna start the playoffs. Yeah, we're gonna sit down here every year and top all these threes and layups. Everybody thinks so wonderful and all the spacing. We're gonna have all these maps in this case by Kirk Goldsberry and they look beautiful. And then we're gonna get down here in a playoff game in May, and we're gonna watch someone go 1 for 22 from the three, and I'm just waiting for it then. And it's like I'm sitting here going to coach's point just to follow up on him. It's like we say so, but in theory it does not work out that way. Because up to now I don't see all these banners hang out in Boston's arena for the 10 years. I haven't seen them. I must have missed them. The Harden years must have been wonderful. I must have missed all the great championship runs in this case here too. Like when it's all said and done, you have to have at least, if not one or two mid-range assassins, or you are not getting through because that's the shot you will get in the playoffs. They're gonna run you off the 3-point line. Yeah. Just the Warriors that won a couple years ago said, "Hey, Steph and Clay, You
Yeah,
watched
but
those things, but
they had Harrison Barnes.
well, not even that
And
team. I'm
then
talking the one just recently won. Wiggins is
Andrew
a
Wiggins.
mid-range shooter, and, and, and,
Yeah.
and I suspect in this case Curry took more mid-ranges
he
probably in that final than he
he
did in
improved,
the
yeah.
other ones
And
previously.
Jordan Poole was pretty good in that series too in the finals.
Yes.
Right, but those guys are getting the stuff off of the mid-range of this case from Wiggins and to some extent Curry. Like that was what was when things got tough, those guys were able to pull up and just get a mid-range shot. Clay to a lesser extent.
Well,
But like
I remember like Dad Tony talking about like why do you do so many of these specific things with Harden? And it's funny because Harden doesn't really have a mid-range game either to this day. To this
No.
day. And it's interesting because he was saying, well, if you do the numbers, I can't remember, it was like 1.8 random number points per possession. That was like X higher than whatever the league average was at that point. And he's like, that's why. So it's like mathematically, this is what, and it's just, it feels like you're homogenizing the game in a sense.
right.
Now I'm not saying that the Raptors offense is heliocentric because it's not. And that's probably right now, based on the current skill sets, it's probably for the best. But I'm not necessarily even saying that needs to be the way. But
Yeah.
it just seems like they're always, a lot of these teams are trying to do either heliocentrism or another version of it, just going to threes and layups. And it's a long-term discussion that we've been having on this podcast, of course.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to kind of wrap your head around because like I understand what we're talking about, and that's where I'm kind of landing on like what is our expectation of Scottie Barnes? What's he going to be in 2-3 years? Is he your number one option? Then yeah, you're going to need him. Like I call the mid range like it's the mob deep. It's survival of the fittest. Only the strong survive. That's a fact, right?
Exactly.
And you need a dog
Yeah.
to be able to score from there if you want to win a championship. But I'm not sure if Scottie going to be that guy. Is that the plan? For him
I
to be
don't know
that
if we
guy?
want to segue to that discussion because that's a really good
but
question.
that's kind of like where
Yeah.
that's where I land is that I'm not really sure like how to
That's
approach
what-
the mid range with Scottie now compared to last season is because I don't know what they're thinking he's gonna become.
Right.
Right. It's a hard thing for us to decide right now. And also like we talked about Scottie Barnes having 3 different phases of his season. Like Darko had that too. We got to give him like that moment as well. Like we can quibble about some of his decision making, all that kind of stuff. But he's actually had like 3 different teams.
So
There was
Yeah.
pre-OG Anunoby, there was post-OG Anunoby, now there's this team,
right.
And that's a lot to kind of wrap your head around as a coach. And he's alluded to it actually recently, where he kind of said that, yeah, it's been a weird season, and it has been. So Scottie mid-range, like I'm not even sure if it's like really on the bucket list right now. It's not even even like the 10th thing on the checklist because of how much they have to figure out still.
Well, yeah, and especially when you're effectively developing your own coach along with this entire roster at this point, you're going to have some challenges. Now, we did talk about a couple of things. I did want to touch briefly on Boston just because, we're talking about the playoffs, threes and layups, and then we'll kind of segue back to the Raptor-centered stuff. But obviously, without looking at the standings, I'm fairly certain that they're running away with the East. I had concerns at the beginning of the season. I said that they would be a better regular season team, but I was concerned not only because of KP's health, but also, their reliance on Al Horford at times, and also just if they're not going to give Tatum reps, sorry to go stick on this point, but even Dirk didn't win a championship until he embraced that. And so I'm wondering, do you think that Boston has what it takes to, like, if you were to put an Eastern Conference, I never ask finals. I say conference finals. If you were to put your Eastern Conference finals today, who is in, who's your 3 that you would say are most likely to make it?
Coach, why don't you go first? You can go first. I'll go after you.
Yeah, this is really for anyone. But yeah.
Who's going to go in the conference finals with Boston?
Top 3 teams. No, including Boston. I'm assuming everyone's going to have Boston as one.
Yeah. Boston, Milwaukee, I think will be there as well. Feel like I'm probably, I think Cleveland. I think Cleveland's somewhat legit. I think they got length. They got a superstar. They got a lead guard. They got guys who can protect the rim. I think if Cleveland's healthy, they're that number 3 team. I say it because Philly with Embiid, that changes the story. So And I'm just not quite sold on the Knicks. They're good. I worry about injury history with them because it's been piling up a little bit. They're still doing well, but I just, with Cleveland, I think they have a little bit of everything that you need.
Yeah, it's hard to project the East right now with the Knicks looking the way they are, and also the big old Joel Embiid caveat that we have to consider, and what's he going to look like when he comes back. But I mean, like now they've fallen out of the top six, and the Miami Heat they are surging now. They found themselves a little bit, and if you really think about it, they're only like 2 games out of fourth.
Every year.
Every year, my friends,
So,
that was my number one team I was going to pick, man.
So
Because going back to my
yeah.
mid-range assassins with a fellow number 22. And I tell you, every year they're coming down there. I know Boston fans right now are quaking their boots. They're just begging for the bracket. And then you don't want to see black and red in the bracket. Tell you right now. Bill Simmons is right now praying they do everything to crap the bed to avoid Miami at all costs. Because Miami is one of my 3 teams. There's no doubt, no doubt in my mind, Miami's one. And
they got the best coach in the NBA.
Exactly. You know,
culture.
Yeah, and I have the Knicks. They're too deep and they're too good in this case here. And they play hard. They're not going to give up any easy outs. So I like the Knicks. And just for the fact that if Boston gets if they get on the right side of the bracket, they should be there. But don't ask me. I ain't betting my house to put them in the finals. I'll tell you that right now. Because as far as I'm concerned, Jason Tatum, the other day he actually did. I can't remember who they were playing the other night while I was watching them. It was the Lakers? They're playing the West Coast trip. And he finally started going the post. I think they ended up winning the game. I was like, and he's like, he might be learning something. He's actually heading the post. Look at this. I post up on someone. He had like 4 inches on the player. I was like, he did it about 3 times straight. And it broke over the game. And it's like, okay, you're figuring this out finally. Because if he can figure that out, then I will change my prognostication when it comes to Boston. Until then, nah, man. Sorry, man. Them in Milwaukee, too fragile for my liking, man.
One thing to think about is like how calculated Joe Mazzulla has been with his team, and I've been pretty impressed by it. With how he's commented several times on how focused the group is and how they don't give up, and they're not like when they're up by 30, they want to make it 50. And that kind of mentality, that kind of like workman mentality, that possession by possession focus is exactly what you need in the playoffs. If they're harnessing that, then we're looking at their talent and like, okay, they lost Marcus Smart, they gained Kristaps Porzingis, and they gained Drew Holiday. Like this is a better team than it was last season.
True, but if I wanted to be skeptical, I could go and say like,
you can be skeptical. Let's go.
Yeah, are they any different than the Raptors as DeRozan and Lowry that will play hard all during the regular season, and then when we get the playoffs, because everyone thinks Lowry and DeRozan have the same quote pedigree as Brown and Tatum, they don't see them the same way. But I've watched now for 5 years with this Boston team play at a certain level and look like they're the world beaters, and then when we get to playoff time, they're losing games by 30 points in the playoffs. Win a game, then lose by 20. Win a game, lose by 15. So I'm sitting there going like, if everyone gives their best punch to Boston, are they really as great as we think they are? Because now they're actually even less deep than they were in previous iterations. They're dealing, and trust me, as a Mavericks fan, I've had the KP experience. So let me say, I ain't trusting that in springtime. Okay, I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, I've been impressed with how healthy he's been. I'll say that.
Yes.
Well, let me throw this at you. Okay, so we're comparing Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan to the Celtics, right? Mm-hmm. Tatum, Brown. Did Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan have Drew Holiday? Did Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan have a healthy Kristaps Porzingis? Like this is the difference. When they came back against the Nuggets, they made it interesting right at the end there. Like Jason Tatum didn't have a good game. It was Drew Holiday. They were attacking Jokic in some switches, and he was able to get a few buckets off of it. And also Kristaps Porzingis, he had a few mid-range shots, and they're able to close down that lead. And yeah, Tatum missed that shot, but they were right there, and it wasn't their best player that got him there. That's the difference. That's the difference.
My concern. See, that is my concern. You're making my point for me because Lowry and DeRozan, what they're also known for is throwing an odd clunker in a playoff game. And you can't have clunkers if you get deeper in the series. And Tatum has had plenty of clunkers.
But what I'm saying, but you're proving my point too, is that I'm saying that they may not need him to do it every single game.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can get away with that in the playoffs. You get later in the playoffs. Like no disrespect to Drew Holiday, fine player, gentleman, and stuff like that. NBA player of the year when it comes to man of the year stuff. I got no problem with Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
But you're telling me now it's like Eastern Conference or Finals. I got to depend on Drew Holiday. I feel like I've seen this story before. His name was Marcus Smart, who was outplaying Tatum in the finals, and that ain't gonna serve you well either.
Yeah.
Right, the two best players
Yeah.
from Boston in that finals was Smart, arguably, and Brown. Once he wasn't tripping over himself with turnovers, but those were arguably the two best Celtics.
Or his left hand. Or his
Yeah.
left hand.
Yeah, and this goes back to, I think, bringing it back to the Raptors side. And I know, yes, it might be early for Scottie or whatever, but you need at least, I would say, 2 dependable scorers at 3 levels to make it far. And when I say dependable, I mean consistent. You can't have, ideally, yes, I agree. But I'm just saying, like, if you had, like, I don't know, LeBron and Kawhi, right? Like, it's a different, you're in a different conversation. But
you do need 2 guys who can score at all 4 levels. You do.
Yes.
You actually do.
Yes. Yeah. And like,
Well,
night to night, not and with an X factor. And from there, then you can maybe make a conference final. And then,
Right.
Coach, you were saying?
Celtics have 4 guys that can give you 20, and most guys can probably give you 25 if they had to. I'm assuming that Tatum and Brown are going to be good. To me, it's up to Holiday and Porzingis. Porzingis protecting the rim, also stretching the floor too. Don't get me wrong, but Holiday's perimeter defense and the way that he attacks pick and rolls, I think what Amit said, like with Jokic and stuff like that. I always think like that 3rd or 4th guy is always going to be key. Like when the Raptors won the finals, I think it was Kawhi and Siakam. I think you can make argument they were 1 and 2, but we saw how big Lowry and Gasol were, and Fred was, right? When
they're going to need a bench guy to win them a game. When I say that, it means like they're going to have a unique performance in the playoffs. And so I was thinking about this with Peyton Watson too. In that Celtics game, just like this guy is going to win them 2 games. Because of a block, because of a 3-point shot, because of his defense on insert here. He's going to do that at least twice. Yeah. Very impressive player.
Yeah.
And Derek White, I forgot about him too, by the way, who can get you 15 to 20 and defend really well.
But to me, that's the difference between Denver and Boston, right? I know 2 guys I have no doubt about will give me 20 plus points in any playoff game series. Their 2 big dogs are always going to show up. And then the question is, there's no doubt about that. You can stamp that in there. Right?
No, it's not even that. It's just like Jokic is in a class of his own.
True, but Murray turns into like almost like superhuman in the playoffs.
For sure, he's very good, and that's like a bonus though. But like it's a fact, Jokic, like I want to put them in the same category, but they're just not. Like he is by far the best player in the NBA.
Right. I'm saying from a standpoint of a tandem is that when you can bank on that every night. And now Michael Malone, I can say, I know every night those 2 guys are going to give me probably 60 points. I don't have to worry about that. And then MPJ decides to chip in. If he decides to wake up and give me 21 night, I'm straight. Or KCP or whomever it might be. Yeah. That's my point. Their big dog in this case in Boston is supposed to be Tatum and Brown. Brown's usually, for the most part, to be fair to him, usually pretty consistent in playoffs. It's how Tatum goes is how the Celtics go. And you can watch it, how it plays out in the last series with Philadelphia last year, and then in Miami series, when he's nowhere to be found, and he's had some triple single games where you're like, dude, you can't be doing that. Like, I expect Drew Holiday to steal you a game.
And I'll say this, like from a depth standpoint, like the Celtics have done an incredible job of building out their roster. Like it's the one thing that I've been begging for as a Raptors fan for like the past, how many years? Can we please have X through X, rotation players to even get you through the season so that you don't have to like just completely destroy your guys' bodies as you're trying to make like the playoffs, right? Or play in for that matter. So yeah, I mean but anyways, it's we will to be continued, I guess, in the playoffs.
I can't wait, man. I got the popcorn ready, man. I can't wait to watch this.
I will say that's what happened to Sacramento as well early on because with Sabonis. They gave him the Draymond special, and he couldn't convert from that area, and that the long let's say the DeMar zone, and he couldn't.
It's funny you mentioned it. As we were discussing that, they were popping in my head.
Oh yeah, no, I had it in my mind too, because I remember us watching that series and we were talking through. It's like, what are they doing? But anyways, again, he, of course, Beyond's a big Fox fan as well.
You have every right to be.
And the Nuggets are actually my, as Trey would say, my mistress team. I grew up on the West Coast, and of course, I lost my
Okay.
team, so
Yeah.
I have an excuse.
True.
With that being said, of course, we talked about a couple things just to bring it back, Raptors land real quick. We could talk about NBA all day, every day, but we talked about assessing Barnes as well as the coach, for in the different ways that we can throughout the season, whether it's fair or not. And that's really my question is, you kind of have to find a way to assess it. So do you think that there's a way? And I'll let the others try. Does anyone think that there's a fair? I think that there is. I think you could look at it in three distinct areas, because you can and I'll separate it out. We'll for us, we could talk first about the coaching and then from the players, right? From a coaching standpoint, I've always been of the mindset that, like, when the going gets tough, that's the best time to assess a coach. Spo, you brought up Spo, right? Spo was trashed as a coach because they thought he was riding on the coattails of LeBron. It wasn't until he had that James Johnson led team, and he almost led that to, I think it was a 500 record, and they just made the playoffs by a tiebreaker. That showed, like, people were like, okay, he could coach. And so to me, it's like, it's almost, now I know it's first season, but it's almost like when it's tougher, that's when you really get to see what someone's made of. That's just my opinion. Coach, I don't know what your thoughts are beyond, and then we'll go to Amit, of course.
It's good to be on this one. Let's be on one.
Yeah, how much I have such love for Infinity for Darko. I see it this way. I'll give Darko his due. I think he's kept the team together. So there's always like kind of spiritual element of it. He hasn't lost the team. So props to him on that. I give him kudos for that, because this is a team that could have gotten lost a long time ago based on everything that's gone on. So kudos to him. I think a lot of times with Darko, sometimes, man, it's just like, I think timeouts, he's been pretty good with that too. I think overall, I think, he's found a way to manage that for the most part. It's the strategy elements and the personnel decisions that kind of just make me lose my mind sometimes, where it's like even last night's game, right? If you had to tell me roll the dice, who's going to start now with Barrett out? It's like, we're going to put Gradey in that position. Really, we're doing that, really? It's like it just kind of put your team behind the eight ball. It was so obvious, and then you had to make the decision in the second half to go bigger. When it's like, dude, man, why do you do that in the first place? Like, it's like we're asking for trouble tonight. Like, and a guy like Ayton, guys like Ayton, you know that dude. If you play with that dude all the time, he just looked at the spreadsheet. He's like, wait, that's what they're starting tonight.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not snowing outside, he'll show up to the arena.
True, but he's smelling PBs that night when he sees that front court. He's like, what the hell?
Yes.
You can't do that to certain guys like that. Certain guys like that can just smell that. You got to give them some type of way to make it feel difficult for them, and they might just go away for the night. But when you put that in front of them, man, it's like pretty much like a big fat, turkey sandwich sitting out there. It's like, oh boy, yummy. Let me get my personal best on tonight. Let me make it 20 and 20 tonight. That's what guys like eat and think like. I was like, oh gosh, are you kidding me? But I said before, it's the changing, how fast or how slow, I should say, he makes the adjustment sometimes.
I was gonna say, when he decides to experiment, it's sometimes like, okay, well, so today's the day we can start grading, right? It's like everyone else can start grading tonight. Put some spice out on the, okay, the meal tastes a little better today. Or worse. Or worse.
No, I think like. Oh, sorry, Beyond. If you're
go ahead, Coach.
Okay. I think it's been a bit of a mixed bag this year. Like, first of all, there's been a massive turnover with this team, and that's going to take time to kind of work itself out. And I say time, I mean like it takes months in a sense to work out. But I think some of the developmental stories this year, Scottie being an all-star, he's led the team in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals for the year till he get hurt, which is quite impressive. I think Gradey's the last 2 months is another developmental story that's turned out really well for Darko and his staff. I think just as a fan too, I see like they're 22nd in offensive rating. We're 30th, and they were the Sixers process bad for about a month and a half, their offense, until it finally started to get turned around. Even before OG got traded, you saw some signs that things were starting to get turned around a little bit. I think they're second in assists, team assists this year, which is really good because they were not that last year. It's a I like it's more of a team brand basketball, and I appreciate that versus the ISO basketball we had last year. So props to Darko on that, and like Beyonce keeping this team together because it's been a rough year. It's been a few years that we've seen a year quite like Tampa, literally, I think was the last year that we've seen that. And then prior to Tampa, it was before the Messiah era, it was the Colangelo era that we had a year like this. Defensively, not very good. Now, we are 23rd in defensive rating. Some of that is due to the turnover. I do wonder about next year if there's going to be more of an emphasis on bringing guys in that are more quote unquote defensive players, or there's going to be more defensive specialists on the staff for next year. I think it's needed because you guys know if you're not in the top 10 or 15 in the NBA in defensive rating, good luck. You're probably not making the playoffs and you're not going to go much further. I get it. They're rebuilding. They're going to have to take those steps eventually. And like Beyond said as well, some of the rotations this year, it's been mind more, and it happened in the last 5 minutes, and they eventually caught back up. But I just felt like he was 2.5 quarters too late doing that. But other than that, like it's a mixed bag. I think I would have him back next year just based on the offensive success and the individual developmental stories of Scottie and Grady. But we'll see how this looks come next year. Maybe halfway through the year, we'll see what it looks like.
I mean, I take a slightly different approach. I mean, no matter what, I think he's back because the man upstairs, the seat was toasty, and if you only get a certain amount of people to fire before it looks like you're like, man, you know what I mean? You gotta get the resume in order first before you start doing that, just in case. I mean, we see what's happening with the WNBA potentially coming to Toronto. I hope it comes to Toronto. We know what happened with, of course, it not coming here, which is, of course, it's unfortunate. It'll be interesting to see. You never know, right? Until 10 years later, and it's on someone's, maybe it's on Grange's. He has it on draft or something. He's just waiting for the, for the signal, right, or whatever it is.
Or
but
Alex has prehistoric part 2, and we find out
prehistoric part 2.
We find out what went down.
It's like, stay tuned. But of course, I think you can assess them. I don't think it's all bad. But I think that there's still work to be done on all fronts, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But there is somewhere to start from, as we're obviously talking about kind of the turmoil in the season, and we're looking at the, of course, I think the Nets lost 2 yesterday. Yeah, everyone's helping out everyone again with whatever. It's a perfect question. It's a perfect time to basically ask the question that everyone keeps talking about, which is convey or keep. So I don't know what team you're on. Of course, we'll all. I think we're actually fairly aligned, if I'm not mistaken. We're all team convey, more or less.
Yeah.
But yeah.
on the topic, it is the topic on Raptors Twitter. And I think people have been against how I feel about the situation, but I think you just let it play out the way it's supposed to play out. And I think it's important that they try to win each game that they play. I was on the side that I think Chris Boucher should be playing. Yes, he makes mistakes on the defensive end. Everybody is, but at least he gives you hustle. At least he freaking tries. At least he's like willing to get a little mucky, right? And I find like a little bit, especially with this team and kind of their personnel, a little soft sometimes. Maybe not a word I want to use, soft. It's like they're not willing to grind.
Great word sometimes,
not as physical.
Yeah, and I think you need that. You need a little bit of sandpaper to win games, and I think Chris Boucher offers that, and that is a recipe to winning regular season games, playoff games. Like it never fails, right? And if Chris Boucher is making smart plays, like he was a difference yesterday. Like we have to acknowledge that he was a difference. And people are saying like, why are they going to play, a guy who's 30 years old? Is because like they have no freaking culture right now. Their culture is what? Family and kumbaya, right? We're going to go for a bike ride. Like I don't want to be that fan, but at some point at some point it is about winning games and progressing towards winning games. If you're not winning games, if you're getting blown out, maybe play someone who's going to up the effort level, who's going to show everyone, who's going to make everyone else more accountable for what they're doing on the defensive end. And like, yeah, he might miss a rotation, but again, everybody is. At least he's going to contest at the rim. At least he's going to contest at the rim and flip backwards for some reason or whatever the hell the case is. Like he's going to do that. And if others aren't doing that, if they're not willing to grind a little bit, to get physical and to show some force and fire, then I think this is a moment that you could teach a lot of guys about what it takes to win. Chris knows. Right? He knows the focus, all that stuff aside from that, which is something. But I think he understands what it takes to win games in the NBA. He's been in the league for a while. So that's why I thought that he should be playing games. And that's why I think they should be trying to win every single game right now, because I don't know what this team is right now. And I think I was mentioning this the other day with Will, is that the Orlando Magic last season, they had a strong finish to the year. Yep. And Cole Anthony had mentioned that he felt like that kind of catapulted them and made them feel like they were that they kind of found themselves going into this season. Look where they are, right? This kind of stuff matters. Now with the pick, it's gonna go to the Spurs at some point. This is sort of a weak draft. I think it's more important that they find themselves, that with these core players, especially with IQ and RJ, Kelly, I think he's going to be here for at least 2 seasons, Gradey. It's important that these guys understand how to win NBA games, right? No pick is going to help you figure that out.
Nope.
Honestly, right?
Not right
Victor,
away.
You get a Victor, then different case, but there's no Victor available, right? Like, and also it's going to be hard for them. What? I
was going to say our beginning season, Beyond would say Victor's going to win all these games. And I was like, I don't know if they're going to win, because it's Victor on his own too.
Yeah, and also like we got to look at it logically as well. Like it's hard for them, like they're kind of stuck where they are. It's hard for them to get any worse than they are, and it's hard for them to get any better at the same time. They're just kind of where they are, and we're hoping for some lottery ball luck like we got with Scottie Barnes.
And to be honest, I think from just a management perspective, depending on where you land with that, I think sometimes being stuck and you are forced to play it out may not necessarily be the worst idea for this specific, based on how this year kind of went. You kind of also get a little like a couple more data plots per se. Mm-hmm. I will say one thing about Chris Boucher, and I'll let everyone else have their final words, is this. I kind of have always dubbed him as the engine of a chaos unit. I mean that in a very positive way, because you put him in for 15 minutes and it can change the energy, the course of the game. Yep. You leave him in there, or if you're relying on him for like 3 minutes night might be a little bit of a different issue. And so, we'll see what happens moving forward. Obviously, decisions need to be made on other roster spots like Bruce Brown and whatnot, and we'll see what happens. I don't know, Beyond, what are your thoughts, ending up?
I know we got to wrap it up, so I'm good, really. I think you guys hit on the head what came to Chris Boucher and all the other stuff. I always treat Chris Boucher like a knuckleball pitcher. He's good in this case here. You threw him out there for a couple innings.
He blocked DeAndre Ayton in isolation yesterday. Like that happened.
Exactly, but I think he's one of those guys that as he gets too much time, then the flaws start to kind of show itself. But it's a
Yeah,
change of pace.
sure.
He's perfect for a change of pace, and that's how I see it. And I'm glad that he's getting some minutes because there's not enough guys on this team that should warrant minutes over Chris Boucher, quite honestly.
And that's another part of it too, is that you're losing games anyways. And if you're saying that you want to win, and you're saying that it's important that we find out, like, what guys are part of our future, then like Chris is actually a way in which you can find out who is part of your future, who's gonna raise themselves to the way that he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is
In a small sample size, as you said, in a small sample size.
yeah,
Exactly.
right.
15, 20 minutes. That's what we're talking.
The other thing too is like I hate talking about players like this, but if for those of you who view things as an asset, like you don't want to depreciate your asset by just letting it languish. Like some people, I heard some people say like, why are we playing Bruce Brown? It's like, oh, if you want him gone, okay. Like if you're in that camp, I'm not like that. I just want to watch good basketball. That's it. But if you're one of those people, one of those listeners that like, I want Bruce Brown gone, and I'm gonna go make an angry tweet about it. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, take a second. But the other thing, I think, you need to give guys a chance to showcase their talent as well, Coach.
Yeah.
I think part of my opinion this year, a little bit on Boucher, is that him playing with Precious Achua hurt him. I think with Precious gone, he's been better. I just think he's better at playing with players who don't quite have his skill set. Like him playing with Olenek can work because Olenek is very good in the high post and being a connector piece. Or him playing, he doesn't, but him playing with Turtle could work maybe in a sense, or him playing with Porter as well. I just think, like you had said, Amit, that this team is basically no culture right now. And it's something that Dwayne Casey really stressed when he was here. Like, it's like pushing the boulders, like hard work, or pound the rock. That's what it was, right? And Boucher, in that sense, really encapsulates what that means.
Sure.
And the last few games that he has been playing, he's brought it, and I credit him big time.
Yeah.
15 to 20, 25 minutes, maybe max a night.
So
last thing I'll say on the matter is that if you look at the way IQ has played, the way he's progressed since Scottie was out, and like he has so much more responsibility, and I give him so much credit because he's wanted all the smoke. He's been dying for it, right? He wants the pressure. He wants the ball in his hands, and he's been succeeding. There was an interesting, like five plays or so, 5 possessions on the offensive end yesterday in the fourth quarter where they started running high pick and roll with Chris Boucher, right? And IQ got a pull-up 3 out of it. There was a pick and pop with Chris Boucher, and then there was another layup that Emmanuel got. And then after that, they brought DeAndre Ayton to the level, right? And IQ ended up turning it over. And then the next time around, they ended up blitzing him, and then Chris Boucher turned it over. Like, this is what we're talking about. We're marveling at the things that he's doing because we're seeing like these elements of his game that are so unique and so fascinating with what it could look like next season. But then there are these things that he has to work on, right? And he's willing to work on it. Like, I want to see what it looks like, in 2 weeks from now, because he's clearly progressing. And that is exciting. This is like actually you're building part of your culture in this way. So that's why I've never really been a fan of just like why would you not play your young pieces? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like why?
I never got it.
Like, you want them to become better players, but no, wait, we need to tank for a top 6 pick in a somewhat weak draft. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I was saying the same thing, like to these guys. Some playoff experience, play-in experience, because I want this team to fight for the 10th seed. It's better than no development. We
Same.
need some development moving forward.
Yeah.
I want to convey the pick. I want my assets that I know I'm going to have next year for sure. Some development's better than none. Be careful what you wish for, people, if you want this pick, because you could be beyond. No offense, you could be Detroit if you have too many young players.
Hey, look, man. I told you, man.
It's true, man.
That's a low blow, man. That's a low blow.
But he's not wrong, though.
Talent, they get a ton of indivitold talent.
No, it's because it's beyond. He likes Detroit. That's why.
Yeah.
No, I know. I told you we're going to the next Rockets. I tell you that right now, man. You watch and see.
Yes,
So,
good one.
with that being said, it's been Basketball Rewind. Next time, that Amit comes on, he's going to tell us whether or not Dwayne Casey's rock is in the basement still. But is there anything that you want to plug, sir?
No, man, I'm good. Thanks for having me. That's
Awesome.
kind of it. That's it.
I will let you know when this is posted, of course. People like, comment, subscribe, and if you haven't already, hit the bell notification. It helps out the algorithm. That being said, Basketball Rewind. Take care, everyone, and peace.